Hello, friends. This is John Klein, a third of episode 209 of Shadow and Flame of Magic, your premier Kitty Pride Lockheed and Magic podcast. And we're going to deep dive into Extreme X-Men, Volume 143. Then I'm going to review Age of Revelation titles, Expatriate X-Men 3, Undeadpool 3, X-Vengers 3, Cloak OR Dagger 3. Then finally, the Marvel Winter Break Special 2025 and Will of Doom 1. I was going to do the top 10 comics and movies of 2025, but realized it'd make more sense to do that in the first episode of 2026, as we got one more week of comics this year. So, um, before we get started, my lovely wife got me this cool Kitty Pride logo for Christmas. So I was happy to add that um, to the background there. And, yeah, like, I do wish it had the Shadow and Flame logo to it for the point of the podcast, but yeah, can't go wrong with that. It looks pretty great. And so Extreme X-Men Volume 143. Next month I turn 44, and like tradition on the podcast, we saved the very last issue 43 for the last week of the year. And so, since this is a comic that came out in May 2004, we get a little bit of a recap. Well, actually, no, I guess we don't get a recap of what it is. But the world has changed. The mutant children of humanity, whose genetic structure grants many of them extraordinary powers and abilities, have come out of the closet, determined to claim their rightful place in a world that still looks on them with fear and even hatred, standing alone to preserve the peace in society increasingly torn. The flashpoints of violent conflicts is a team of outcast heroes whose lives and purpose are defined by simple fundamental truth. Whatever our genes, we are ultimately human. If there is to a future, we must learn to live together. Extreme times require the Extreme X-Men. Here we get a cast of characters here, all of whom on this page were defeated by Elias Bogan's mutant predator, who's seeped in shadow. Who could it be? But our main characters we're going to follow are Sage, Magma, Kitty Pryde, and Rogue. This is Prisoner of Fire Part 4 of 6, called The Shadow of the Soul. And this is brought to us by Chris Claremont and Igor Courtney. Inkers Adams, Pepoy, Rapman, and Fliora. Virtual calligraphies Russ Wootton's The Letter. Colors are by Liquid. Um, who I always like as a colorist. You can always tell like a sleek late 90s comic by Liquid being the colors. And assistant editor Stephanie Moore and Corey Sedelmeyer. Editor Mike Martz, editor-in-chief Joe Quesada, and publisher Dan Buckley. And Kitty's liking Rogue's new name of Anna Raven. And Rogue's currently a bike mechanic. And Kitty's a college bartender, and they joke about how they want to switch places. Uh, Rogue and Kitty talk about how we lost Carmen, her father, Kitty's father, to. If you're watching on YouTube, that just did a dramatic up close. I'm like, what happened there? Um, and just Carmen died while on Genosha, just in the wrong place at the wrong time, which is the story of all mutants' lives. But he didn't have any powers, in which Rogue is quick to correct her about, hey, no one, like people, it was an island full of mutants and they all had powers and I didn't keep them safe. And then Rogue almost touches Kitty's shoulder and Kitty flinches out of habit, but Rogue doesn't have her powers at the moment, so they're fine. And then we get to see them just, all right, it's just nice to see just characters chit chat. I miss that. Rogue's wondering if they can trust Sage, and Kitty's like, of course we can. Storm vouches for Sage, which is weird, as by this point, Rogue and Sage have been working together a bunch, so I don't know, it feels like the word balloon should be from the other people. And then they talk about their different philosophies, which is nice. Um, Rogues talk about how sometimes people need second chances, but then sometimes there's just evil, and evil has to be stopped. And Kitty just believes that, um, sometimes you gotta fight the battles you can fight. And there's guys like Bogan and Magneto who are just bad guys till the end of time, which is weird as Kitty knows Magneto to be a good guy. Um, but that's the not the fight that matters. The world's our home, and we, all of us human mutants, have to decide whether we have it in us to share, to live together in relative peace as the human race. That's the battle she's there to win because she's a dreamer. And then uh, Sage calls them over as they're gonna get ready to do their mission. And so we see Kitty and holding hands with Rogue, Magma, and Sage, and we see the cool use of her powers. Essentially, her power anchors the four of them in place while the Earth keeps on spinning around them. Presto, they instantly find themselves moving westward at better than 300 miles per hour. That same phasing power allows her and her companions to move through the solid crust of the planet as though it were open air. And you need to see how everyone's responding to the phasing. Sage does not look well, but Rogue looks like she's excited. And then not only are they phasing around, they're also phasing down into the um Earth's core, and magma is keeping them safe from the molten lava. And then they lose her at one point, and which is all part of Sage's plan. And then they end up at the Hellfire Club in Hollywood, or just north of Hollywood. There's an ad here for Final Fantasy 11. And so they talk about how Bogan might be very old and he was there for the original parts of the Hellfire Club moving west. Kitty gets tangled up and then knocked out before she can phase. Rogue fights this big thug of a person. And then Kitty has been fighting with Revenant, who beat up Rogue earlier in a different issue. And so, um, so Kitty takes them out. We see Bogan's crew of baddies or goodies turned bad, which includes Meltdown, Cannonball, Gambit, um, Bogan's mutant predator, Bishop, Sunspot, and someone else. And then Rogue and Kitty team up and they talk about how, they're X-Men. This was never going to be easy. But then, right when he's needed, Gambit flips on Bogan as he's been faking it the whole time and takes out some of the goons. We get an ad here for the Daredevil video game we never got treated to. Same, we still don't have a Daredevil TV series. And then issue ends with Magma, who Sage was worried was going to get telepathy controlled, and of course she was. And so that's not great. And then I'm pretty sure Kitty's in issue 44, but we'll find out next year for sure. And that, everyone, was X-Treme X-Men Volume 143. So pretty cool. And then we get Extreme or Expatriate X-Men 3. This comic, it's a very good comic, but with the Infinity series, and I've read issue 6 now, where we learn Darkchild killed Ilyana after they both slayed Belasco. This just feels like bitter fruit from a poison tree. Darkchild arrives, announces Melee is a traitor, but so is Lyrebird. Lyrebird was supposed to bring the Expatriate X-Men to Darkchild, and Melee was supposed to bring the 3K tech into the Limbo territory of Providence so they can spy on Darkchild, which is pretty fun twists and turns. But then we get more information on Lyrebird. Lyrebird did all of this for his daughter, Nika. Not just his daughter, her mother is Ilyana Rasputina, which immediately takes me out of the comic. She has Lyrebird's blue skin, but Ilyana's hairstyle, including the bangs. She does not look X years old here, so she already born and being kept safe. Her mutant power is to be one of the limbo lands. She also seems out of phase. I just don't love that Ileana hasn't had a canon relationship. Sure, some comments about finding certain boys cute, but I always found that to be her trying to relate to Danny Moonstar in those moments. Don't get me wrong, I love the Cat Yana ship, and I'm a fan of the Danny Yana ship. But I love that Krakoa moment where she's asking those three aliens if they want to make out, so maybe she's willing to engage in a relationship now. But for the most part, I always found her to be asexual because of her clear abuse she received in Limbo during her most crucial years. I don't know. I just don't love that all of a sudden she has this secret relationship with this brand new character and now a child. Plus, Ileana died minutes, days into Doug's takeover of the X-Men during that Shield mission, so Nika had to be born before that. As Dark Child clearly states, she adopted Nika. The math isn't there, and I feel bad if Ashley Allen has to incorporate this into a run of Magic and Colossus, or that Eve Ewing had to include this into her miniseries. I just want to know whose idea this is. And Nika could have aged up artificially in Limbo, but I feel like Ileana would want to make sure her child didn't do that. So I don't know. I have lots of thoughts on Nika. Maylee's motivations are great. She was okay with 3K having surveillance as she believes the ghost of Philadelphia is Kitty Pryde. Everyone thinks this is bonkers, but Melee has faith. This is why Melee is my favorite of the exceptional students, as she's the most like Kitty, but also has differences that make her her own person. We get a very quick fight with Juggernaut versus Bronze and Colossus. Darkchild and Melee make a deal. Melee's ship is destroyed, and Nika has gone back to Limbo, so no one got what they wanted. Colossus is going to stay behind as he's reunited with what's left of his sister. Plus, he can maybe hang out with his niece, maybe. We see Dupe and Toad were part of Melee's ship crew. We knew about Dope, Dupe, but Toad's new. Toad gives them a tip about the Dragonfly Rail line, which might be the a Last of Us reference. Seems like this should play heavily into Age of Revelation finale. We'll find out next week. Bronze ends the issue with a "To Me, My X-Men," which is fun. But I don't love the Nika implications. Also, no additional Axel information. Undeadpool 3. Oh, Fearless. I wanted more from you. Undeadpool finally gets Fearless to the Expatriate X-Men, so I like that. They are weary of him as he accepted a big bounty from Mystique before, took the money, and then did not kill Revelation. Undeadpool is slowly losing his mind, well, more than he usually has, and becoming a zombie. He bites Miss Marvel, which I don't love. I guess her body isn't elastic all the time, so he gets a bite of her. He can't hurt Melee as she can phase. Cable arrives and body slides by two. He reveals he knows Fearless's power. She can enhance powers and has some telepathy. So when she attacked Cable, she corrected his ailing powers, and now he has control over the TO virus. He's explaining all this to Undeadpool, who I'm not sure is even registering it, but he must, as in the first issue, we were given Deadpool narration boxes, so he is aware of the situation. Shout outs to Rosie, who has in her career of PlayStation Access, had to pay attention once she gets started uploading videos to her Professor Juice account. Undeadpool eats enough of Cable that he's Deadpool again. Fearless has used her powers to make the Expatriate X-Men powers wonky. Miss Marvel is stretching all over the place. Deadpool confronts her. She enhances his powers and promises she'll balance them once he gets her to Revelation. So I don't love that she's pro Revelation. He slays her as like any good person. He is anti Revelation, but she grew up in the age of Revelation, so that's all she knows. I guess she's another character we have to be playing the waiting game with. And see, when she shows up in the present day, she seems at least 20 here, so she'll be an X now. Fearless is dead, and Deadpool's healing factor is curing everything but the cancer. The cancer is eating away at his body, which the healing factor is trying to heal. And he turns into a flaming skeleton and goes out in a blazing fire. I thought this was a good mini. Essentially was the last Deadpool story. I like Fearless until her story showed up us more about her character Cable remembered his friendship with Deadpool, so that's nice. A solid mini. The jokes actually work, which is all I really can ask for in a Deadpool mini, even an Undeadpool mini. X-Vengers 3, I like how the issue opens with a silly gag of Hawkeye telling Danny Moonstar how much they can't trust Sunspot, just to have it be revealed that Hawkeye has been talking on the open channel where everyone, including Sunspot, can hear. That's a really silly way to open a comic. President Sam Wilson doesn't want to risk the X-Avengers coming into his base, but purple ray beams are blasting from the sky. Turns out MODOK has been behind these attacks. President Wilson gets back into his Falcon suit. It is a little tight around the waist, which is very realistic. Danny has really stepped up her shield abilities. MODOK kills Hawkeye and Sunspot, then he is killed by being melted. The day is saved. Will the X-Avengers appear in finale? Only time will tell. I like the Danny parts, but we didn't get much of her in this mini. But the mini does tell a complete story, so that's nice. Cloak or Dagger 3. We get a lot of Cloak and Dagger together, which I like. I truly do want someone to sell me the Teddy Cloak. Be a perfect collab with Build-A-Bear, except I'd rather not spend $60 on it. Their daughter, Ayla, has the ability to balance powers for a time. We do get to reveal that on X Day, Dagger was pregnant, so present day Dagger legit could be pregnant now or soon. And with how little we see these two, Ayla could be born, then 2 years later, our time could be aged up just a little with each new appearance until she stops around 10 or so, and then spend a decade as a 10-year-old until some story needs junior heroes to step up. Fenris, as always, are gross. They mention how their father, Von Strucker, always said, if you want something done, do it yourself. But I can't imagine he ever said that directly to them. As sure, they do lots themselves, but are rarely successful. Aya wants to live in the real world and does feel weird not honor that request. Sure, whichever parents living in the in between would be there by themselves. But wasn't that pretty much um what living in the real world is, except that person could have friends and television, so maybe it is worse, but you can't restrain a 10-year-old to an existence of just one small house and a rotating parent. Especially not once she wants to live more. I wonder if we'll get at least a panel of Cloak and Dagger in finale. This was good mini too. Feels like it could easily be the future of these two, minus the whole can't be in the same place situation. If you like the two characters, you should like this. I can't imagine anything in finale tainting this miniseries. And then we get the Marvel Winter Break Special 2025. This comic is just a delight. The art combination of Nick Bradshaw and Rochelle Rosenberg will always be a treat for my eyes. Roxxon apologized for their AI nonsense from the summer special. Rogue wants to stop what they are doing in the Savage Land and has gathered all of her hero friends, minus Kitty Pryde and Magic, of course. She has the brilliant idea to have Wasp design reinforced winter gear for everyone so that no one has to be running around in their makeshift bikinis, which Gambit remembers. Except a giant dinosaur, a feathery albino T-Rex, comes along right at the exact moment and destroys everyone's clothes. So, oh no. Rogue makes a reference to her recent Savage Land mini, but Kazar and Shaun of the She-Devil barely remember it, almost like it was a shoehorn in, which is a fun meta joke about retro miniseries not necessarily being canon. Some characters remember those events better than others. Gwen Poole is a professional photographer. We get a Wiles Potaccio and Chris Sotomar X-Men double splash, but our girls don't appear. There is a brunette I don't recognize next to Jean, but it definitely isn't Kitty. Spider-Man talks about how they don't keep moving, they're going to be hero popsicles, and Deadpool makes a genuine funny joke about eating Spider-Man gumball eyes. Sauron and Stigron are working with Roxxon. Roxxon had benefits and ample respect. Warm loves stock options. Logan keeps giving Captain America grief about how he doesn't do well in the snow. Gwen Poole reveals she's also Oh yeah, because she's been a photographer this whole time, but then she gets into her Gwenpool uniform, and that's a big reveal. And Jeff the Landshark's with her, and the two of them defeat all the Savage Land goons. She also brought Christmas sweaters for everyone, which is very cute. She also gets away with a sweater pun. It's cardigan time, and Deadpool wasn't encouraged to say Adargaris a symbol, which is a play on a fabric. I'm not sure. I didn't get that joke. And then we get Will of Doom 1. I only bought this for the J. Scott Campbell wraparound cover that has magic on it. I didn't really connect with One World Under Doom. The two issues are on my wish list as magic is seen as issues 7 and 8. Practically cameo appearances. The event went on so long, which is nice as it meant Doom ruled overall for a long time. But the 2 years from now, it'll be a crossover you will have to be reminded happened. So this issue is dealing the fallout. Val Richards is given all of Doom's assets. She's going to give nearly all of it away. She's going to create a charity in Doom's mother's name, which I like. She's also going to keep Doom Island, which I can only hope, which I only know about because of the great X-Men Fantastic Four Krakoa miniseries. Be nice if Doom's mutants would appear in future Fantastic Four stories, as I believe they should still be living on that island. Issue ends with Val turning the Doombots into Fantastic Four branded Doombots, as no one knows when one needs an army. I like Sue panicking over Val's safety as Val did die. That did happen. So yeah, she'll be overprotective. I just don't want to see her in the main relationship with Val going forward. But also, I'm not planning on reading many more Fantastic Four comics after this. Um, so next week's comics, which will be the last of the year, we have X-Men Age of Revelation finale, Predator Kills the Marvel Universe 5, Sorcerer Supreme 1, which I'm getting the first issue of with magic on one of the variant covers, Marvel Zombies Red Band 4, and then Ultimate Endgame 1. Then our current Age of Revelation rankings will be Unbreakable X-Men 3 as my favorite ish mini. Book of Revelation, Omega Kids, Expatriate X-Men, Binary, and Amazing X-Men. And then the mid-tier be Cloak or Dagger, Overture, X-Vengers, Undeadpool, Lord Kitty, Sabretooth, Sinister Six, and The Last Wolverine. And then our bottom tiers, Long Shots, Radioactive Spider-Man, Iron and Frost, Age of Revelation, Rogue Storm, War of Revelation, Age of Revelation Infinity 4 through 6. And that, everyone, was episode 209 of Shout on Flame. And with Magic, thank you so much for listening or watching on YouTube. And you can follow me socials at SNFW. No, that's the podcast. You can follow the podcast at SNFWM on Instagram, which I'm going to post images from X-Treme X-Men. So there'll be actual content there. And you can follow me at Jacko SII at TikTok and YouTube and Blue Sky. All right, everyone. Thanks so much for watching or listening, and I'll talk at you next time. All right, everyone. Bye.